back, everybody. This is another episode of the Exodus Project. I'm your host, Steve Eisenhower. And again, I'm joined with my good friend, Davon Mays from Clouds of Torah.
Shalom, shalom.
We are going to continue on in our series about the mark of the beast, Jesus, and the fourth beast. This series we started not too long ago. And Emperor Jesus kind of tied in with it too. And we didn't really try that, but it's funny how it all works out. But yeah, before we get started, everyone hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, um, give Davon and I a big thumbs up, and be sure to check out that description. He has links for his books, other books by different rabbis and scholars, and also I want to get this out there: the link for Rabbi Stuart Federo's Hebrew Jumpstart class, Learn Hebrew in 1 hour, is also linked down there. Brilliant resource, and will help you read the Bible in its original language. But yeah, let's get started, bud. Well, I'm sharing this screen. How you doing this week, man?
I cannot complain. How are you doing?
Thank God, man. Just getting over being sick. So just glad to be able to be
Glad you back in business.
back in front of a screen again. Just what just what I need, right?
Right.
All right. Coming through.
Jesus the Beast.
Probably a controversial thumbnail.
Well, it's definitely going to get some attention because what people don't realize is, like we said in the first video, if all authority has been given to him, then the beast would be under his authority, right?
Right.
So, devil's advocate that, well, if God really is in charge, like really, really in charge, pre-Jesus, right? That means the Romans were in charge and God was really in charge of that situation. But we know Israel gets punished by the nations, right?
Yep.
that's prophetic. You will serve other people and their gods. So
Yeah.
you bring Roman Christianity into the picture, guess what you're going to do? Serve the Romans and their new God, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it.
So Jesus in the New Testament.
2 Thessalonians 2:4. So who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Matthew 28:18. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Romans 9:5. The ancestors are theirs, and from them by physical descent came the Christ, who is God over all, praised forever. Amen. I'm going to let you go first.
So a little bit of context that people might not realize just seeing. I'll address 2 Thessalonians 2:4, and I'll let you off the leash. Little context people might not realize is this is Paul's address about the antichrist, right? He's saying that the antichrist is here. Don't let yourself be deceived. Take a very almost seclusive lifestyle. And I think it might even be the very next verse or a few verses later. He says, and in fact, if there's something taught that didn't come from my hand or from me orally, so he's admitting that oral transmission is important. If you didn't get a teaching directly from me, you have to reject it. We've talked about that before. That's kind of where the Catholics stand above any other denomination, is because they truly adhere to a oral tradition that dates back to the proto-orthodoxy, which ties in well with the beast, right? All authority. So realistically, the Orthodox Church has the proto-Orthodox Pauline authority, if you go by 2 Thessalonians. And for anyone who doesn't believe me, check out a Protestant versus Catholic debate. I think you'll really be surprised, because Catholics most times mop the floors with them just on those grounds. It's like, we have the oral transmission, we have the tradition. Like the verse says it right there. But furthermore, it's showing here that this antichrist figure is someone who opposes the true Christ, right? And Paul believed this was imminent. Um, he's going to sit in the temple, exalted, right? Called God, worshipped. What's the distinguishing factor about Jesus in opposition to the Tanakh or the Hebrew Bible is, we know a man cannot be God, but that's exactly what happened to Jesus. If even if you're a historicist, just some plain Jane Jesus guy walked the earth, well, the people after him made him into this mythological figure. And he's worshipped as God, not just as a God, but in most cases, 99% of Christians believe he is God, like Yud Hey Vav Hey, you know? So, I mean, I'll let you continue on, but Paul's kind of admitting he's doing a good job of his Antichrist explanation of describing exactly what Jesus is after many years of Christianity, right? And really not all that long, because we understand 2 centuries, 3 centuries afterwards, the councils were now finally concretizing what exactly the final doctrines are going to be, you know? So we've done plenty of content on what exactly that is. Um, but yeah, what do you got?
Well, in contrast, Second Thessalonians 2 and 4 and Romans 9 and 5. So in Second Thessalonians, like you said, he's talking about the Antichrist, who will be looked upon as God, because this is what the worship and the admiration he's going to get. But in Romans 9 and 5, that's exactly what the Christians have done to Jesus.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
says, "Came the Christ, who is God over all."
Mm-hmm.
So, side note, there are some translations of Romans 9 and 5 that separate Jesus and God. But like you said, majority of Christians believe Jesus is God. Not all of them, but if you just took the Catholics in general, Catholics make up millions and upon millions of Christianity, and they think Jesus is God. So this
Yep.
verse right there is pretty much their doctrine.
Yep.
So the problem is in Matthew, if authority had to be given to Jesus, because he says, all authority has been given to me, who had it before him?
Right. Right.
Right?
And you see a lot of your Son of Man literature in the Synoptics. Jesus referring to himself as the Son of Man. You don't really get to that ultimate um uh high Christology, eternal past figure like John. In the Synoptics, he's very much calling himself the Son of Man, clearly an
Mhm.
allusion to Daniel 7.
Right.
Right, right, right. So
Right.
where and there it says that the Son of Man comes with the clouds, you know, to the Ancient of Days, and to him is given authority.
Again,
It's an
given.
illusion.
Right.
Matthew, sorry,
No, you're
real
fine. I'm
quick,
agreeing with you.
but
Yeah, I'm
but
agreeing with you. Yeah.
Matthew is, we know Matthew is very good at trying to quote the Tanakh. Well, this one he does a decent job of, at least. But he's stating that, you know Jesus in his own words is saying, I'm the Son of Man. Power and authority is given to me. Clearly, like I said, an allusion to Daniel 7. So if God has to give you the authority, that means you're not God, right? That would have been
Can't
the
be.
worldview of Daniel when he put it down on the paper, you know? So,
Yeah. You can't be something if somebody had to, you can't be God if you have to be given authority. That means that at one point it was not yours. And this antichrist is already in the world. If he sits in the temple, well, if the temple was still standing, he had to have sat in that temple before it was destroyed. So
mhm,
what some Christians try to do is place this as the third temple and say,
right.
"Oh no,
They
he's
have to.
talking
They
about the
have to do
third
that.
temple." No, Paul completely makes it an imminent thing that Jesus is coming back now in his generation. He says, if you're married, act like you ain't married. Like this is an imminent thing. Mark 1:4 says the time is fulfilled. Everybody was expecting this to go down as they lived.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, Caligula. Caligula. The Jews were refusing to worship an image of Caligula. They broke down his statues. So Caligula got mad and said, "Okay, then I'll just put a statue of myself in your temple." Um, so come on, y'all. Like the emperors were doing this stuff.
Right,
Antiochus in the Hellenistic period did the same thing. Put a
right,
statue of Zeus in the temple. So it's not out of question to think that that could be in a way figurative, a statue, right? We see so much in apocalyptic literature that's metaphor. Why does everything have to be taken so literally? Well,
well,
because we have that worldview because the literalists won, but still.
right. Well, the thing is this is interesting because if Caligula put himself in the temples, like, well, you're going to worship me whether you like it or not. This again is exactly what happened to Jesus.
Hmm.
Now the Catholics have made statues of Jesus and they worship him as God.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this supposedly antichrist that Paul's trying to refer to really is what Jesus turns out to be,
Hmm.
even though unbeknownst to Paul, this is what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? That's kind of the gist of it. And if authority was given to Jesus, then that authority that he has would allow for such an antichrist to come, right? And it would allow for a beast to come and do these things via the Roman Empire, because this is the problem. In Jesus's time, the Romans were the problem.
Yeah,
Give Caesar's
for
things
sure.
unto Caesar. Well, guess what? If Caesar wanted you to get that mark, guess what you got to do? That's what he wants, right?
Hmm.
Paul says in Romans 13, if to such honor, whatever the authority that has been placed by God, aka Jesus in Paul's view, in Romans 9 and 5's view, right? If the Christ is God and they have the authority, whatever they say do, you do it, or you're opposing what God has set up.
Right.
Back to Matthew 28. If Jesus has that authority, you're really opposing Jesus by opposing the beast in the context of how Christianity is set up.
For sure. For sure. And to touch back on that Caligula point, he reigned from 37 to 41. So, you know, less than a decade right after Jesus is dead. Thessalonians, our earliest books, late 40s, early 50s. So
Mm-hmm.
something like that would be fresh in the mind, so it really wouldn't be out of the question to think, well, hey, this beast, um, this big bad Rome coming against Jerusalem, their emperor's even trying to put their own image in the temple at Jerusalem. So it's really not out of the question for that to be fresh in the minds of apocalyptic Jews at the time, especially when you're expecting Jesus to be coming back soon,
Right,
within the next 5 years.
right,
So who's to
right.
stop every emperor? Like, who's to say Paul didn't think, okay, maybe the next emperor is going to do that too? You know what I mean? So I mean, I can't say that for sure, but when you have an emperor just 6 years prior doing that exact thing, I mean, come on,
There's
it's
patterns,
patterns and
and
it's
yeah,
it's clear
and
domination
emperors
on
do
behalf of Rome.
what works, right? If this emperor did something that worked, guess what the next one's going to do?
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? People, the, you don't be the emperor and rule for a long time without paying attention to how you do it. Now, they was getting assassinated too, but usually the ones who reign for longer periods of time keep the same how to
Yeah.
stick around a little bit longer.
Hmm.
So yeah, we can move on.
Okay. Jesus and the Romans.
Revelation 13:15. It was permitted to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast could both speak and cause whoever would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Ellicott's commentary: the image of the Roman emperor was in ancient days made an object of worship. So the image of the Roman emperor. Now, if Jesus has become God in the Roman perspective, once they adopted Christianity, as Paul says, the Christ is God, who's really running the show here?
Right.
If the
Right.
emperor thinks Jesus is God, then that means if Rome is the beast, and most Christians, kind of go with this, whether they be, well, I wouldn't say, especially a lot of the early Christians thought, Rome was the beast. Even a lot of modern day Christians will associate the Pope and stuff like that with the beast.
Hmm.
But the Roman, the image of Rome as a whole represents the beast, the power, the control that they had. So going back to Revelation 13:15, if it's permitted to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast could both speak and cause who would ever not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So, and this is just my perception of it, and this is, of course, this is, it's a lot of symbolic stuff. This is not literal,
Yeah, definitely
but
is. Yeah. Yep.
Paul, being the spokesman for Jesus, and if Jesus is the authority, then the image of the beast would be Jesus. And to say that the beast is actually speaking and talking, I'm not saying that there was images of Jesus speaking and talking, but if you did not worship Jesus, who is the new authority, what were the inquisitions?
Right.
There was a punishment for that, to cause whoever would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. If you would not bow to Jesus, the image of the beast, right? Put this in perspective. What happened to you? There was two
What the same?
inquisitions. So can y'all understand why this is a problem based on how Christianity is set up? Again, the book of
Right.
Romans
Right.
really does not work well with the book of Revelation, because it's telling
Right.
you to obey the authorities, and these authorities would be the same people telling you to get the mark.
Right. Yeah. If I can kind of bridge that time gap
Jump in, bro.
between Paul and the Inquisitions, right?
Please.
So legitimately the context of Revelation is it's going to be like a transfer of power, right? Rome is dominating the Christians, the Jews, whomever, Jerusalem's destroyed, you know, but it's going to be a transfer of power, right? Jesus is going to come back, Rome's going to crumble, and the church is going to be on top.
Right.
And it's pretty crazy how Rome ran with that and adopted the church, and the church became it's well, regardless. But the image of the beast, prior to the context you're talking about, Inquisitions after Rome's adopted Christianity, but initially, piggybacking off of Ellicott here, who's the face that runs the place during the Roman Empire is the emperor, right? He's on your money, he's on,
Mm-hmm.
statues of him all over the place, and he is really like the head of the state religion,
Mm-hmm. He's
right?
God, especially after
Yeah,
he dies.
and after he dies, and then his heir is the son of God, right? So, like I said, the face that runs the place. So if the beast itself is the empire, well, we've really laid that out in the first episode that the beast is the empire, not so much a singular person, but who's the image of the beast would be the emperor, given
Mm-hmm.
breath to speak, make decrees.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense. And then after, a few emperors down the road, a few centuries, Christianity is now, you know,
The
blended
beast.
completely with Rome. Exactly. Exactly. And who's now the Pope? The Pope is now the Pontifex Maximus, right? And he is in effect, I'd say second only to the emperor at the time, but Pope speaks on behalf of who? It's the Vicar Christus, right? So who's he speaking on behalf of? It's basically
Vicarious
his word.
Filii Dei. Yeah.
Exactly. His words are basically that of Jesus. So really, who's your emperor? Who's the face that's running the place now? Is Jesus,
The
basically.
image of the beast.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
I
and
like how
just like
you brought that right back home. Exactly.
just like Jesus, or just like just like Jesus said. I was gonna say just like Jesus said, but I meant Davon. but 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 just like Davon said, you fast forward 1400 years, and now you have the Spanish Church, you know, convert or die. So it all ties together. It's so hard not to see it, I think it's harder not to see it than it is to see it.
Well, what people need to realize is the beast, like it morphs. It went from the Roman Empire into the Christian Roman Empire.
The Holy Roman Empire. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So the image of the beast went from the actual emperor to Jesus. It's
Yeah.
like you said, once the popery came in and the pope's words began to basically become the law, that in the image of the beast to that era was Jesus.
Hmm.
And if you did not worship Jesus, you would be killed. So you have the same beast, but a different image.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really do believe Ellicott there. He confirms that point.
He says it right there. Yeah. The image of the Roman emperor was in ancient days made an object of worship, just like today, the image of Jesus is an object of worship.
Hmm.
Like this is not debatable. Go to any Catholic church. Matter of fact, not even Catholic. You go to any church, it may be except for a Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses, you're going to see a statue of Jesus, or you're going to see a cross which represents Jesus.
Painting,
Period.
little figurine,
Or you
something.
might see Mary. Going to see angels all over the place. Like Deuteronomy is completely ignored. Don't make images and stuff. Completely
Right.
ignored.
Yeah, and I mean, and the illiteracy argument isn't an argument because I will give that bit of leeway. People were illiterate; they needed pictures to understand the stories, but still, like, come on. I mean,
But you
all
don't
the
have to worship them, right?
that's true.
Kissing
I
their
I was in a
feet.
I was in a Greek Orthodox church for a real good friend of mine's wedding back in November, and I must say, man, I was actually breathtaken at how many images there were. I mean, any Bible story you can think of, even ones later like Constantine's conversion, the battle on the bridge when he converted, saw the cross in the sky or whatever. Even things like that are painted all over the walls. But then of course, guess what's up front is a big painting of Jesus and some golden crosses and um but I mean beautiful, beautiful work. Like I mean some of the most eloquent artwork I've ever seen, but you walk in and it's just like, wow. Like what happened? How did this in any effect come from Judaism? You know what I
Made an
mean?
image of the beast. That's basically what happened. So, yeah, we can move on.
So Barnes' notes on the Bible.
And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. That is, that that image of the beast would be naturally powerless or would have no life in itself. The second beast, however, had power to impart life to it so that it would be invested with authority and would exercise that authority in the manner specified. If this refers, as is opposed to the Roman civil power, the power of the empire restored, it would find a fulfillment in some act of the papacy by which the empire that resembled in the extent of its jurisdiction and in its general character the former Roman Empire received some vivifying impulse or was invested with new power. That is, it would have power conferred on it through the papacy, which it would not have in itself and which would confirm its jurisdiction. So let's bring this back around. It was invested with authority. Who gave it the authority?
Hmm.
The book of Romans says whatever authority is given by God. Who is God to the Christians? Jesus.
Right.
This all comes back to the feet of Jesus in Christian thought. So if
Hmm.
the Romans lost their power, as we see, like Steve said, you know, uh, when it was like the second or third century, Rome began to fade. But as soon as they
And it
adopted
fell in the
Christianity,
fourth. Yeah.
fourth, you see, third, fourth century. So when the actual Roman Empire fell, and then it got its power back once it adopted Christianity, and then the Holy Roman Church started, taking over. And then you got the Spanish Church and all these things that we talked about.
Hmm.
That authority came from Christianity,
Yeah. I mean, look at the
which
East. The East under Constantine thrived up until what, the 14th century when the Ottomans came on the scene.
that's a long
So,
time. That's a long time.
And where was
So
that? Byzantium. That's Istanbul. That's Turkey, right? That's Paul Paul's home country, right?
completely, that's his town. So again, where did this authority come from? If Jesus said all authority was given to him, what authority did the papacy claim? Rome claims it's the papacy claims its authority from Jesus. If the Pope is called the vicar of Christ, right? What
Hmm.
exactly authority is it claiming? It's claiming to be Jesus on earth.
Yeah.
In their eyes, God on earth.
For
So
sure.
they're
When the Pope makes a papal decree, that is
that's it.
considered as if Jesus himself is speaking. Yeah,
Right.
that's a
So
completely authoritative.
where it says was invested with new power, what is this power? It's Christianity.
Yeah.
And back to your argument you said earlier, well, people were ignorant. Yes, exactly. Which is basically running a scam on people who have no idea that you're running a scam because they can't verify.
Right.
You know, when Paul's talking to people, when you're talking to Gentiles about Jewish traditions and laws and stuff, they don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So it's very easy to convince them through their own culture, since they already worship their emperors as God. Well, this Pope is pretty much the new emperor. I guess he's
Yeah.
God now.
I mean, who was it who signed off on the Crusades? You know, the Eastern Church is coming under attack from different factions. So the Pope, the Western Church says, you know what? Well, we'll mobilize all of Western Europe. Basically, say if you go on this war, all your sins are forgiven. Take, march to the Middle East and kill anyone who's not a Christian. So that's how is that not exercising empirical authority, right? Imperial authority. It's right there. The power to wage a war, conquest. That's the definition of an empire. Radical
Well,
conquest.
it says right here the former Roman Empire received some vivifying impulse or was invested with new power. Where did the power come from? See, I'm asking questions. I don't really have to give any verdicts.
It's true.
Answer the question. Who gave the Romans, once they revived and got new
Mhm.
power, where did it come from?
And it's really something to consider. You know, Jesus, the Sermon of the Mount, or the Great Commission, you know, one major contrast of Judaism and Christianity is all about radical proselytization, make more Christians.
Yep.
And the Crusades, in part, were in the name of that. We can wage a war to proselytize because we have our God given right through Christ to retake Jerusalem and make all the Jews or Muslims there Christian. And if they don't want to be Christian, then we'll kill them.
You die. Those who would not worship the image of the beast. Everything when they say all roads lead to Rome, that is so crazy because we keep coming back to Romans 13,
Hmm.
written by Paul, and Paul is basically the spokesman for who? Jesus, who he calls God in Romans 9 and 5.
Right.
So we keep bringing this right back. This is why we can say, based on the text, the history, Jesus was the beast as far as the image of the political system or the governing body that would
Hmm.
be bringing about everything that the beast is supposed to do
Right.
via Rome.
Hmm. Matthew Poole's commentary.
The beast mentioned in Revelation 13:11 had power to give life unto this new formed idolatry, conformable to that of the pagans, in which the old beast again lived. He gave life to it by his decrees and bulls and canon laws, and by his excommunications and censures of those that would not comply with his idolatry as heretics, after which the persons so adjudged were delivered up to the secular power to be put to death. Luke 19:27. But bring here those enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them and slay them before me.
Hmm.
Go ahead, bro.
Okay, so by reading this, I'm going to assume that Matthew Poole is a Protestant, because naturally a Catholic wouldn't be calling himself idolatrous. But um, yeah, it just piggybacks again. This Matthew Poole fellow is really saying the exact same thing we've just been saying for the last 4 slides, right? Is he's citing here Revelation 13. He's commenting on that. Had power to give life to this new formed idolatry. What's the new formed idolatry? Is reworking, and I have a video on Justin Martyr and how he even concedes this, that um, pagan religions were just demonic, like demonic preludes to Christ, right? That they took truthful concepts and the devil made them into falsehoods. It's called the what's that called? The demonic mimicry argument. Ain't that funny? um but the major argument, because Justin Martyr, when he's a church father, by the way, people, who was raised a pagan, whenever he was dialoguing, he was an early apologist. Whenever he was dialoguing, he wasn't doing it with Jews. I mean, he does in Trifo, but regardless, a lot of his apologies are against polytheist pagans. They had their apologists too, right? And they're saying, their baseline argument was, this religion of yours, this Jesus religion, is like nothing different than what we're doing. And Justin's like, yeah, so you should convert, because what we're doing and what you're doing is so close. Like, what's it matter? Right? So
Right.
when you have church fathers, early apologists, conceding yeah, we adopted these, that Jesus has these similarities with these pagan deities, but you're wrong and we're right. That's Rome grasped onto that. We've talked about before how Rome was very eager. If it was something they thought was good, especially when it came to religion, they were very willing to adapt. You know, do what you want as long as you pay your tribute to the empire and sacrifice when we say to, so we win our wars. We're cool with you. Worship whatever you want. So adopting religions and worshiping who you want and thousands of gods was no problem for them. You know, um, so for this commentary to say here, excuse me, that this new form of idolatry is conformable to that of the pagans, in which the old beast again lived. What's he saying? He's saying that this new beast, or the Christian beast, right? This Jesus religion as it's evolved, is indistinguishable from old Rome, right? Pagan Rome.
He says he gave life to it by his decrees and bulls.
Hmm.
If anybody knows anything about the Catholic Church and the bulls. So you were delivered up to the secular power to be put to death. Why are you killed? Because you did not worship the image of the beast. Now, Luke 19:27. But bring here those enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them and slay them before me.
Yeah.
Who's talking?
JJ. Biker
So,
Jesus.
so, so if we have Jesus saying things like this to kill my enemies because they don't want me to reign over them, and all
Mhm.
authority has been given to him, and Paul says that authority is the Roman Empire. And we see Matthew Poole's commentary says the Roman Empire made decrees and bulls. Look this up for yourself. What's a bull? What's a decree and a bull? And what's the association with the Romans and the Catholics? And excommunications and canon laws. What is
And if
all
and
that?
if you didn't comply with this new Roman Christological idolatry, you were branded a heretic.
Yeah. Gangs in New York.
Yeah. And what
He
else
said
I find striking is it says delivered up to the secular power, which just goes to show that the state and the church are one.
one. Yeah. What did he say in Gangs of New York? We don't want your Roman popery. That's what he says. And they go to battle in the street with
Mm-hmm.
knives and axes and stuff, right? Behind religion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they don't want those decrees and bulls that the beast is ordering to, ordering around.
Yeah.
So, this is not just us talking because, we don't like the New Testament. Matthew Poole has a huge commentary about the same topic.
Yeah. And he's a Christian.
So, you know, what made him think this? He got it from somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a real problem with, like I believe that would be called like restoration theology, right? That God restores his church back to what it's supposed to be. But it just blows
Division.
my yeah, right, right. But it really just blows my mind how a Christian, I'm sure this guy's a Protestant. I'm not too caught up on who exactly he is, but I'd be willing to bet he's a Protestant, probably a more conservative one at that. And he's echoing exactly what we're saying. He's just not, we're kind of giving it an umbrella. Christianity, Catholicism, all its subsidiaries, they all fall into this category because they all worship a man as God. He's giving himself a severance, but if you can say it about one denomination, whose calendar is he going by? Whose days of the week is he going by? Whose gospels is he reading?
Right.
Right? These things were all orchestrated by the church he's damning right here. You
Yep.
know? So Matthew Poole, I think you're a very honest fella, but I mean, one more step to go, bud. you know? Um,
Yeah. You just uncover that one eye. You should be all right. I don't know which one it is, but you need to
right.
know
But I
one
just
of
find it though, I
them.
find it very striking though. And I know we talked about how Luther is really like the originator of this, weaponizing revelation against the Pope and stuff like that. But when Christians are saying this stuff about Christians, that they are the beast, the Roman Catholic Church is the beast, they're not wrong.
They're not
it's
wrong.
just it's just there's a part of the blanket you're missing there, bud. You know?
They got their own book in the New Testament. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Romans. It makes perfect sense. It's not
Yep.
like it's a stretch. Who
Right.
is Paul referring to in Romans 13? That's the first question you got to ask yourself. Who was that authority that Paul was referring to when he was alive? Who could you point the finger and say, yep, they're running the show?
Mm-hmm.
Because he uses the term like governors. Who was
Archons.
the
The word he
governor?
uses is archons in Greek.
Right. Who was the
Mm-hmm.
governor in the New Testament?
yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like y'all can answer that question, right? Everybody knows who Pontius Pilate was. Was he a governor?
Mm-hmm.
And of what country was he the governor of? What empire? Who did he answer to? So when you read Romans 13 with the historical context, who is being referred to here? This is not us making up stuff.
Right. And if he was writing to a community in Rome, who's who's the face that runs the place there?
Because
You know?
I would hope he wouldn't be talking about somebody else, because that would have got you probably strung up.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
You know,
But I mean, New Testament scholars wrestle with that kind of thing. Like they even say like what was Paul getting at? Right? Like these people put Jesus to death and you're telling the followers of Jesus who are supposed to be liberated from this empire to
to
follow
listen to
everything they
them.
say because they're instituted by God. Like when you start getting to the point that Paul wasn't necessarily writing stuff that he intended to be scripture, you start to come to the realization that he's saying like, listen, we're kind of in enough trouble. Our leader got killed by these guys, so just keep your heads down. you know?
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think, but
But then they off him too. So how
right.
allegedly. Then they
Mm,
allegedly off him too. So how did he take his own advice? You know what I
right.
mean?
We did a lecture on it called Written from
Yeah.
Rome, and Nero had something to do with Paul's death, according to some Christians. Some people say that that's not true, but some say it was true. So, again, do your own research. You don't have to believe nothing we say because it doesn't matter what we say. We put the
Right.
text on the screen, we give the resources, and you have to think.
Yeah. And we're not the only ones on YouTube doing this.
No,
You type in your search bar YouTube any of the topics we talk about, you'll find hundreds of videos on
yeah.
both sides of it.
Rome and the Beast. Just type in Rome and the Beast, and you're gonna get 20,000 hours of videos on that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Expositor's Greek Testament.
Revelation 13:15. The statue is made to speak in order to work on the credulity and awe of the worshipers. The trick was well within the reach of contemporary magic. Valor Maxim 8:3-5, and later tradition attributed to Simon Magus. Clem recognitions 47. Clem
Those are
not
the
sure.
Clementine homilies and the
Yeah, I wasn't
Clementine
sure if that was
recognition.
Clement or Clementine. So, but there's the references on the screen. While similar ventriloquism was practiced by Apollo,
Apollonius of Tanna.
Apollonius, thank you,
Mm.
of Tanna and Egyptian sorcerers at Caligula's court. Lucian's Greek word, Alex 26, of the scutcheon of Captain Pope in Bunyan's Holy War, the stake, the flame, and the good man in it. So there's some references there about how contemporary magic was, practiced and attributed to Simon Magus. If you don't know who Simon Magus is, you might want to look him up. Might be the same Simon in Acts chapter 9. So, give that a look.
Yeah,
John
if you
3 and
read those
2.
Clementine homilies, if you're a devout fundamentalist Christian and you read those Clementine homilies and get to the part about Simon Magus, you're not going to like who they're talking about. I'm just letting
Probably
you all
not.
know that right now.
On top of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Simon do battle with Peter in one of the gospels that didn't make it? Is it the gospel of Peter or Thomas or um Barnabas? It's one of these gospels. It's either
I'd
Barnabas,
have to look that
Thomas.
up. I can't say off the top.
Well, anyway,
It might be the Acts of Peter though.
okay, that would make sense because he's doing battle with Peter. So it's in one of the gospels that didn't make the cut, the Acts of Peter, which would make sense. Simon and Peter do battle. And like you said, if you do a little research, some people allude to who Simon really was, and it's probably going to bother you a little bit. So, John 3 and 2, this man came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher from God, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him. Now, if we take this literally, that the statue is made to speak in real time, if this is really a miracle, according to John, it says no one can do these things unless God is with him.
Hmm.
So would God be making this beast speak to you to deceive you in order to receive its mark?
Right.
Well, according to Paul and Jesus, yes, because it's from Jesus, it's his authority. And if you don't listen to that beast, then you will be killed. But let's continue. So in Acts 8:9-11, but there was a man named Simon. Remember before I said, maybe this Simon Magus is this Simon in Acts 9:8-9-11, who had previously practiced magic in the city and amazed the people of Samaria, saying that he himself was somebody great. They all paid attention to him from the least to the greatest, saying, this man is the power of God that is called great. And they paid attention to him because for a long time he had amazed them with his magic.
Hmm.
So go ahead.
And just to clarify for everyone, just like Christ isn't Jesus's last name, Magus isn't Simon's last name. Just means Simon the magician. We don't know what his last name is, right?
Yeah, because
Um,
magi, we see magi.
yeah,
People think the three wise men, they were called magi. Really, they weren't three wise men. They were three magi.
yeah,
That's the
three
Greek word,
three Persian astrologers. Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah. So
Um,
wise men kind of throws you off a little bit.
yeah, that was intentional, I'm sure.
Almost kind of makes you sound righteous. You know what I mean? But three
Yeah,
wise
right,
men
right.
weren't necessarily
Well, yeah, of
Jewish.
course. They recognize that he was the Christ, so of course they have to be wise, righteous men, right?
Right.
Those
They make
silly
it seem like
Jews
it's
can't see
three.
what's right in front of them, but eastward wise men know.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but Apollonius of Tyana, that's really all I want to mention real fast, is he was doing the same stuff Jesus was doing. Read any literature on Apollonius of Tyana. He was healing the sick, raising the dead. Um, After he was killed, his followers said that he raised from the dead and was exalted into heaven. So Jesus isn't some exclusive figure in this time period,
by
um,
any means.
by any means.
And John 3:2 and Acts 9 prove this. Acts 8, 9 through 11. If Simon was mesmerizing people of Samaria, it says they said that this man is the power of God. And he was telling them that he was somebody great. What's the difference between him and Jesus? They're both doing miracles. They both got this huge following. Samaria is a pretty decent sized population, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says that from the least to the greatest, they are saying this man has the power of God. But in John 3:2, the people says, or it says in who came to Jesus by night? Was it Nicodemus?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Nicodemus comes to Jesus and was like, "We know you from God because you can do these miracles." So what would Nicodemus say about Simon? He got to be from God too. But obviously, well, Christians are gonna say, "Oh, well, Simon was just practicing sorcery and witchcraft, right?" Well, what made Jesus' miracles any different?
Right. Right.
So bringing this back to the beast, if we're going literal, if the beast really could speak and cause people to worship it because of this image is speaking, who gave authority to this image? It had to be God based on John chapter 3, verse 2. Who is God to the Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Romans 9:5 says it's
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
Yep.
And Jesus gave that authority to the popes, according to Romans chapter 13, according to Paul. In Galatians chapter 1, verse 11 and 12, Paul says he got all that from Jesus.
Right.
Everything keeps coming back to you know who. So
Yep.
when we say Jesus is the beast, that's not trying to be mean. That's not trying to throw dirt. That's saying based on the text and the context and the historical things going on, who else could the beast be
Right.
if not Christianity?
Mm-hmm. And
Who
even if we
else?
don't take that literally and just say that the statue made to speak, is the decrees from the top of the empire,
Right.
whenever the governing authorities of Rome are decreeing, you bring that back to Romans, as you mentioned multiple times now. God is ordaining these things to go forth, and you have
Yes,
to
and
listen
God
to
is
it.
Jesus.
Yeah, plain and simple.
So
Rome is
we're
in
not
power because Jesus said so. That is really the the ruling authority that is ruling via Jesus's blessing or God's blessing, by his ordination, is in fact the ruling authority that killed Jesus. What kind of sense does that make? That's something you're gonna have to really rack your brain to sort out.
doesn't make any sense. Now, just to give you some perspective on this, God does use emperors and empires to punish Israel for argument's sake. But
Oh,
what
sure.
happened in the book of Daniel?
Liberate them too.
Right, exactly. This is true because there was a Messiah who was from a different empire. But what happened in the book of Daniel when a statue was set up, which could be viewed as a beast, right? There was a ruling authority in Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. He made a
It is a
statue.
beast. It's
It is a
labeled
beast,
as
right?
one of the beasts. The lion with eagle's wings is
Right.
the
So we
first beast.
So history is repeating itself. So we have a beast in the book of Daniel that people are told to worship, or you're going to be put to death. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not go with that train of thought of, well, since Nebuchadnezzar's the king, maybe we should listen to him because God put him in this authority. They said, "Nah, king, God can save us, but if he don't, we still not going to listen to you and worship this statue. So do what you got to do, basically."
Right, and Hashem intervened on their behalf.
Period.
What's that go to tell y'all, right?
So I'm sorry.
I said, what does that go to tell you guys? What's that go to
Right.
tell y'all?
Right. So y'all see the difference? Christianity is saying, according to the book of Romans, listen to the beast and whatever he tells you to do it, even if it's idolatrous.
Yeah.
But the Torah says, no, don't bow to that statue. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, no, we good. We'll just die.
It's honestly such a perfect correlation. That's the first beast, right? A statue of the ruling,
the first beast.
A statue of the ruling, the emperor. Just it's a superpower at the time. Babylon is the superpower at the time.
Right.
The ruling faction over the whole Levant. So we'll say that the emperor, Nebuchadnezzar, the king, he makes a statue of himself. What is Revelation 13 talking about? In essence, is an image of the emperor, an image of the beast, right?
Right.
Ellicott says the emperor was made into statues and they were worshipped.
Image to be worshipped, right? Y'all, can y'all see
what did the Jews do? The Jews in that time refused to do it. Daniel opens his windows after a kingly decree is made that you cannot pray to anyone, right? Daniel says, nope, I got to do what my God tells me to do, and gets thrown in a lion's den. Open miracle, he doesn't get eaten. What does Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Thrown in a fiery furnace that kills the guards, right? But they don't die. So clearly, in the Torah worldview, it doesn't matter. You give your life before you submit to idolatry. And Hashem may intervene. You never know. But even if he doesn't, you have to be willing to give your life before you bow to an idol like that. But then fast forward 3 beasts. Now you're at Rome, and your leading theological luminary, the Apostle Paul, is saying, nope, whatever that governing authority, in essence, whatever Nebuchadnezzar tells you to do, you do it. That's really what Paul is saying.
Yep. And again, he said he got that from Jesus. Galatians 1:11-12. He said he didn't learn that from no man.
Right.
But by revelation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no need for me or Steve to be making up stuff here. We're giving you the text, we're giving you the sources and some common sense and some references of how the Tanakh dealt with such issues.
Yeah.
So, some people think we're just trying to be mean and, come after the New Testament. I mean, by reading this, how could you not see these things?
It's a direct parallel.
With all this information. If you don't have the information, I get it.
Right.
With everything in front of you, like, wow,
that to me, that was really profound, is how direct of a parallel it is. The Nebuchadnezzar fiery furnace golden statue story is literally so parallel to Rome, what Paul is saying, and later on worshiping Jesus and his image. How can people not see that now? I mean, it's out there now. It's there. Solomon said, nothing new under the sun. History is going to repeat. The same exact events are going to repeat with different characters over and over and over again.
Yep.
You got anything else on this slide?
Nope.
So Jesus, the church official.
So from the Britannica, Cesare Borgia.
Yeah, Cesare Borgia.
In full, Cesare Borgia, Duke of Valentinois, Italian Duca Valentino, born 1475 or 76, probably Rome, Italy, died 1507, near Vienna, Spain, natural son of Pope Alexander VI. He was a Renaissance captain who, as holder of the offices of Duke of the Romagna and Captain General of the armies of the church, enhanced the political power of his father's papacy and tried to establish his own principality in central Italy. His policies led Niccolo Machiavelli to cite him as an example of the new prince. The election of his father as Pope in 1492 changed the fortunes of Cesare Borgia. Besides becoming an archbishop, he was also made a cardinal in 1493 with the titular Church of Santa Maria Nova, who he was now one of his father's principal advisors.
You
So,
remember, before
go
you
ahead.
start, do you remember this guy from Emperor Jesus?
Machiavelli.
Yeah, we talked about him in
Yeah,
Emperor Jesus. We quoted him, and he outright said that adopted kings are better than natural ones.
right,
That's how you make good government. That's what he said.
right, right. So we see that even in the beast system, it says that he tried to establish his own principality in central Italy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using his father's papacy. So he tried to use the church to enhance his own political power, because he's called the new prince, right? It says the election of his father as Pope in 1492 changed the fortunes of him. Besides he became an archbishop, he was also made a cardinal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, now we see Jesus authority or Christian authority moving through the church from father to son. So the church officials are now based on the papacy. And where's this taking place in? Rome.
Mm-hmm. Duke of the Romagna.
Vienna, Italian, right? This is all Roman stuff, right? So the point is we see the Roman church moving through the ranks as far as who's given the authority, father to son, and the church officials are rocking with Christianity. It's a thing now.
What's funny is, you brought Cesare Borgia up. I, I thought you were bringing him up for a different reason. Um, but it's funny because now I get to bring it up, and I think you're gonna love this. Um, if you do a little research on Cesare Borgia, don't take my word for it. Some people might disagree, but there is a very pressing theory. He's clearly he's making the trying to establish his own authority, but your Renaissance paintings of Jesus, I'm not just going to outright say he was the model, but it is theorized very much that Cesare Borgia is who the paintings of Jesus are modeled after.
Yep. So I was gonna bring that up in passing because I didn't want to make it seem like that's the only thing I want, because that would have kind of stole the whole show, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
hey, y'all, guess who's the dude on your wall in most of the churches? That's Cesare Borgia. So then everybody would be focused on that. But I wanted people to actually see how.
Right, what he did. Yeah.
So let's put that in perspective. Let's say that his face was Jesus, right? The people think this guy named Cesare Borgia is really Jesus. So when
Mm-hmm.
he becomes an archbishop and they can see him moving through the empire, we see Jesus as a politician now. He's the church, Jesus, the church official. That's why I say
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, the church official,
Right.
because on top of his image, the image of the beast is in real time
Yeah.
moving through the country, making political moves, and they
Yep.
can see this guy's face,
Yep.
his paintings of him.
Daddy's the Pope. Daddy's the voice of Christ. I'm the face.
Oh my goodness, his dad is the Pope. So his dad really is kind of like God, and he's the son of God, and he's the church official. Like put this in perspective. If you was alive in the 1400s, this is how you saw this guy.
Yeah.
If the Pope was the vicar of Christ, he's Junior.
Yeah.
Right?
He's VC Junior.
You see, you got a duality. You don't have a trinity, but you definitely have a duality of father, son, popery, and
Hmm.
church officials at the same time. So again, coming back to the beast, who gave the beast this authority? How did Cesare Borgia get his authority from his daddy? Who was his daddy? A pope.
Who was Daddy speaking in the name of?
Jesus.
All authority is given to me from my Father, he says.
We cannot make this up, y'all. This is not made up stuff. Here's all the references. Britannica. You see it on the screen. I didn't write any of this. So if you have a problem with anything we just said, cite Britannica and see what they have to say. Shoot them an email. Go ahead. Again, Britannica, Holy Roman Empire, origins of the empire and sources of imperial ideas. Religious origins, far more effective in the minds of the barbarian peoples of the West, was the idea of the Imperium Christianum. Christianium. Did I say that right?
Christianum. Yeah.
Christianum, or Christian Empire, which took shape after the conversion of Constantine the Great and the reconciliation between Christianity and the Roman Empire.
Hmm.
They reconciled?
Mm.
The people who killed the Christians and killed Paul, they reconciled, huh? The people who killed Jesus, right? Now they good. Okay. Not only did the Christian church become a state church, including in its liturgy, liturgy,
Liturgy. Yeah.
liturgy, prayers for the empire and the hold on, let me do that again. Included in its liturgy, prayers for the empire and the emperor, but it also brought the Roman Empire into the framework of Christian eschatology.
Hmm.
It, wait a minute. It also brought the Roman
Wait a minute.
Empire into the framework of Christian. Wait, that's basically putting Rome in. Y'all see what's going on here?
Wait a
Okay.
minute.
Again, Britannica.com, Holy Roman Empire, origins of the empire and sources of imperial ideas. This is not me. Okay. So again, it also brought the Roman Empire into the framework of the Christian eschatology, doctrine of last things, as the last of the world monarchies whose end would mark the inception of the kingdom of God. Through Christian iconography, and through
Mhm.
the liturgy, the church's view of the empire as a vehicle of God's will. For the Christianization of the world became prevalent. It was expressed with peculiar force in the letters of Charlemagne's advisor, Alcuin.
Yeah.
Alcuin,
If I can start.
please.
Father of modern Christian theology, St. Augustine, right? St. Augustine. In his magnum opus, City of God, he explains this exact point um, about the Roman Empire fitting into its framework of Christian eschatology and how it's the final empire, etc. And how he spoke about how the book of Revelation is really discussing this transfer of power, right? From the world empires to the kingdom of God, right? Well, in City of God, Augustine really explains how this is, and he sees that the millennium or the reign of Christ, not really as a post second coming thing, but that the church age, and that the church has now taken the seat of power of Rome, that the church age is in fact the millennium, and that Jesus is now reigning on earth with the church officials reigning as head of the greatest empire anyone's ever known. That was Augustine's view, and that's the view that got revelation into the Bible. That's just something I need y'all to consider. He
He's got a
believed
whole
that
video on it. Yeah.
he believed that the church age was in fact that was the end, that the kingdom of God was ushered in.
What's the name of that video?
It's called Augustine's Apocalypse.
Boom. So it's documented. Go check that out. There's really, I mean, everything that we've been saying is kind of repeated right here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the conversion of Constantine the Great and the reconciliation between Christianity and Rome. Again, there was a marriage
Yeah.
there.
The revival of power. Yeah.
Right. Not only did the Christian church become a state church, what does that mean? If a Christian church became the state church, separation between church and state? Nope. So prayers for the empire and the emperor. So the church is praying for the empire and the emperor. Now the Romans are in the Christian eschatology and the last empire, according to how they view things. Now, in the book of Daniel, the fourth beast is the last empire.
Yeah.
Again, who is the beast? The
Right.
Romans.
Right. Well, let's look at
Who?
it. Let's
Go
look at it
ahead.
historically. You know, Rome falls. I can't off the top of my head think of the year, but it's in the 300s. The what's it? The Visigoths, the Goths sack Rome.
Mm-hmm.
So to that Christian worldview, it's over, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what? Christian Rome rises from the ashes, right? So I mean,
They
Augustine
revise
wasn't,
history.
yeah, right, and writes history. Exactly. So Augustine wasn't too far out of a sane realm of thinking when he read Revelation to interpret it that way. I mean, Rome probably fell in his lifetime, and Christian Rome rose from the ashes in his lifetime.
The beast was revived. There's a verse in Revelation.
Hmm.
So, and a lot of people, well, I'm not going to say a lot of people, but I have heard views that Revelation was written way after the first century. Like it was pushed back a lot.
Well,
Depending
there,
on who you ask. Some
boy, I
people
mean,
say it was early, but
there's a big movement in scholarship now saying that the Gospels are second century. So
right.
Revelation, oof, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, who knows? But the point is, we see Christianity and Rome as one. And this is from, again, Britannica. This is not us just trying to make that assumption.
Hmm.
What is the Britannica getting its sources from? It says it was expressed with peculiar force in the letters of Charlemagne's advisor Alcuin.
Hmm.
Who is Charlemagne and Alcuin? Like here we're name dropping now.
Yeah.
This
Charlemagne,
information,
Holy Roman Emperor. I mean,
yeah,
he's the Holy Roman Emperor who sat in Germany. Like
this is
he,
not made up stuff, y'all.
you want to hear something sick? You
Drop
know
it.
how the Nazis, it was called the Third Reich, right? The
Mm-hmm.
the
Third
Third
right.
Empire. Do you know what the first one was?
No.
The Holy Roman Empire under Charlemagne.
Under him?
Hmm. Yeah, in German it's Karl the Grosse, Karl the Great.
Hmm. Interesting. And so back to the Roman Empire being brought into the framework of Christian eschatology, basically this is another place where you get replacement theology. So now the church is Israel, but really the church is Rome.
Right,
So really Esau becomes Israel in Christianity.
right.
If you really
Yeah,
want to just bring it all together, if y'all don't know what I'm talking about, Esau is really the last beast. I don't want to go into it right now, but that's
yeah.
basically what we're talking about.
Hmm.
Esau, Amalek, Exodus, where it says Amalek will be a problem from generation to generation.
Hmm.
Well, guess what? Who's been the problem from generation to generation? Again, whose language is on your money right now? Latin. Who speaks Latin? The Pope. Who's the Pope? Vicar of Christ. He's Jesus on earth. So who really is the beast on earth? It keeps coming back to the same situations we've been talking about. We're
Right.
going to take it back to Matthew 28. We're going to take it back to Romans 13 over and over and over again. You can't get
Hmm.
away from it. And this is not our views. We're reading historical and Christian works. citing the
Yeah.
same situations.
Martin
And we got
Luther.
the names.
Martin Luther, father of the Reformation. Then we can move on. But I kind of want to stay honed in on that Nazi point for a second.
Go.
But Martin Luther, father of the Reformation, was a Catholic monk, right? You cannot walk into a traditional Lutheran church without reading the Apostles' Creed and saying the Holy Catholic Church in a Lutheran church's liturgy. Like, I don't care what people say about the Protestantism. Your first Protestant churches still referred to themselves as the Catholic Church. You still read the Apostles' Creed. My whole family is Lutheran. I can tell you 100%. But further, he, in his later half of his life, wrote a work called On the Jews and Their Lies. Basically said they deserve everything they have coming to them, burn their synagogues down, burn their Torah scrolls, pee on the ashes, burn the schools down. They have no rights. They're vermin, rats. At the Nuremberg trials, after the Holocaust had happened, Streicher was on trial. He was the one in charge of the propaganda newspaper, Der Stürmer. Do you know what his main defense was?
Following orders, right?
No. He said, I didn't write anything Martin Luther didn't write.
But that was just a basic Nazi reply. I was following orders. But he said, I'm just
This is the guy
listening.
who was in charge of the propaganda Nazi newspaper.
Okay. Got
And he
you.
said, what? I didn't write anything Martin Luther didn't write 300 years before me, 400 years before me. Catholic monk, father of Reformation, Holy Roman Empire, subsidiary of the Catholic Church. It all ties in. History repeats. What would the
Wow.
Crusaders have said? I was just following orders.
There we go. I mean, there's really no getting around who the beast is, where it got its authority, and who that authority is. Can't do
Yeah. Jacob's trouble, man.
it.
That's is that Jeremiah 30? I urge everyone to read that chapter closely. Is it 30 and 31? Where it just talks about Jacob's trouble. The hardest time in all of Jewish history. But from that is where but out of that is where Hashem works the redemption. Check it out. Read it for yourself.
Is that the last slide?
Nope,
Okay.
this is the last one right here.
Okay, so let's bring it back home. Let's read this and really put in perspective everything we talked about. Romans 13, 1 through 7. Let every person
Woohoo.
be subject to the governing authorities. Who's the governing authorities? For there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. So if you're not listening to them, you're bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority, the beast? Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. The beast is here. We're from the government. We're here to serve you. Then do what is good, and you will receive his approval, for he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes. Who are you paying the taxes to?
Yeah.
Who were the publicans in the New Testament? For the authorities are ministers of God. So that those Romans who were making Jews pay taxes in their own land were ministers of God, attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed. Caesar's things unto Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
Revenue to whom revenue is owed. Respect to whom respect is owed. Honor to whom honor is owed. Give the beast what it wants.
Yeah. Bring that back to Nebuchadnezzar again. Out of good conscience, did Did the three Jewish men just put their heads down and bow to the idol?
Nope.
Did they just honor Nebuchadnezzar because he was instilled as king?
Told them we was good. We good. We're not doing that. So do what you got to do.
It seems one, either Paul didn't know that story or Paul just simply disagrees.
He completely disagrees. He said, no, whatever the Pope says, do it. Whatever the Romans say, do it.
Yeah.
Paul himself was a Roman. So whatever he said, do it. You got to put this in perspective. Paul says to my relatives, the Herodians,
Greetings from Caesar's house.
greetings. He's giving it up to the Roman officials. He has a book called Romans. Who is he talking to and what is he talking about? He's basically telling them to listen to the authorities, and to the Roman mind, this is the authority that they've only known, the Roman Empire. Who else could he be talking about, y'all? He's not talking about the rabbis. Remember in John, they said we don't got authority to kill nobody. So when it says right here that this servant does not bear the sword in vain, he's not talking about Israel. They don't have authority like this. Only the Romans had this authority. When Paul says in Acts 26, I was voting to have people killed and in prison. Who's he voting with? If the Jews don't have authority to kill, who's Paul casting his vote with? Who gave
Right.
Paul authority to kill anybody if the Jews didn't have no authority to kill anybody?
Right.
Because if they did, they would have never took Jesus to Pilate.
Mm-hmm.
Think.
What's crazy is we can actually cite an example from all three of the previous beasts that disagrees with this. The Purim story. Could Esther have walked into the king's throne room, said, "Hey, make a second decree that the Jews can defend themselves," unless, like, if she agreed with Paul, could she have gone in and said that? Could Mordecai have told her to say that? No. You would
And
just
she
put your
knew
head
it.
down and let the Persians kill you. Could Hanukkah have happened when Hellenistic culture and sacrificing pigs to Zeus in the temple was going on? Should the Jews have just put their head down and say, "Okay, we're Greeks now"?
Yep.
Or should the Hanukkah story have happened?
That's three rebellions right there. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't listen. The Hanukkah story didn't listen. The Purim story did not bow down. They fought
And in the
for
time
their
of Rome,
life.
we mentioned Caligula. They tore down his statues and refused to worship them. So he said, "You know what? I'll put a big one in the temple." If they hadn't said, "We are not going to worship your idol," that's Rome, people. That's the beast that ends up turning into what people are worshiping, right? Um, could the Jews have rightfully done that according to Paul? Doesn't sound that way.
Y'all see how this doesn't work. This whole beast thing does not work when you really put it in perspective. It only works if you're going to say Jesus and Paul created a religion that is pro beast.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only other way you can put it. And based on all the other information we put out there that we've shown you from the Britannica, from the church fathers, from the commentaries, Rome is the beast and their authority is Christianity. And I'll bring it up again. States have blue laws. Here in Colorado, we have blue laws. At one point, you couldn't go to the liquor store on Sunday. That got repealed once, states started needing a little bit of money. So now liquor stores, you can go to the liquor store. But you still can't buy a car on Sunday in Colorado. Look up blue laws. Who created those blue laws?
Yeah.
Church cardinals.
Is there? I still don't think mail runs on Sunday, or does it now?
I don't think so.
I still don't think it does.
So to play devil's advocate, some people can argue money. Some states just have tight budgets. But
Okay, but
the blue,
USPS is a national organization.
well, there you go. So, but I
So
know for sure that blue laws you can't buy a car on Sunday.
for
That's
sure.
for sure a blue law, and that's definitely something that people didn't vote on. That was a church decision. Look up blue laws all around the country. I'm sure they're going to be different from state to state, but again,
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
The authority is coming from Rome, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, and furthermore, they say we have separation of church and state. Sure, we do. But what's the US's national holidays that our government is observing for all of the citizens of the US? Whose holidays are you observing?
Easter, Christmas, two of the biggest right there.
Yeah, those are the two main ones. You
Mm-hmm.
don't see Passover off. A
Nope.
friend of mine is in law school. A Jewish friend of mine is in law school, and he has to go out of his way to let his professors know because, of course, he's not just getting his Jewish holidays off. Like,
No.
hey, I won't be here then. Please let me know what work I need to make up. So
Not gonna happen.
yep.
Nope. So you see, what days are the stock market closed? Christian holidays.
That's yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, there you have it, y'all. And I mean, we ain't even got into the mark of the beast, really. We pretty much just laid out who the beast is and where the authority came from.
Yeah.
Once we get into what the actual mark is, that's just gonna, open this up a little bit more. So we really kind of just getting started on this. So I don't want y'all to think that this is all the information about this topic. It's just giving you a lot of background story and not our opinion. We're showing you like this is not nothing we sat
Hmm.
around and made up. No, there's no reason to make up anything. Just open up some books. Today information is very available, very much
Yeah.
available. So, you just get some time on your hands, make time and do some research, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
that easy.
yeah. So until next time, this is part two. And we're gonna have a couple of more of these. Actually a lot more, because there's a lot more to say.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
So
In closing on this episode, every, basically everything Paul tells you to do is what the Tanakh and the Torah worldview tells you not to do.
pretty much.
So yeah, it's pretty much that simple. And they built themselves up a continuation of beast number four. It's morphed, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So any final words?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah, we got more coming down the pipe. But yeah, everybody, if you feel so inclined, if something Davon and I has said has moved you, helped you out, and you enjoy the content he and I bring to the table here, please consider some type of donation or a like or a share. Anything helps. Super thanks, super chat. And if you want to do a super chat, this is something I think you'd be more than willing to do. If you want to drop a super chat on the channel, we'll gladly address it in an upcoming show. Just drop a super chat, ask a question, we'll gladly address it. So we're here to help you guys out. That's why we do this. But it does get to be a lot of work. So we aren't trying to get rich off of this, but it does take hours away from our wives and our families. And yeah, I don't need to beat that dead horse, but I'm sure Davon could agree. We both have jobs and not a lot of free time. So yeah, if anything we've said or done here has helped you out, you know, feel free to help us out. Grab some of his books; they're all in the description. It takes you right to his Amazon links. But yeah, until next time, Davon.
Till
This
next time, man.
was
I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. This was the Exodus Project. I'm Steve Eisenhower. Catch you guys next time.